We are back for part 2 of episode 26 of ZK Live with Ty Crowder from Total Finishing Supplies and Solutions. We have been nerding out about high-end paint sprayers, low-end paint sprayers, paint heaters. We were talking right now about Wagner and the horrible name they have in the residential paint market, and how they're actually a really advanced company on a lot of levels. We also just found out that they are a non-profit, so all of the profit from Wagner goes back into charitable foundations. Fascinating information. Down at the bottom, we still have some questions to ask. So again, if you guys have questions for Ty, put them down there. But yeah, so the GM 4700 gun, that's exciting. The pump that we're pairing with it, it's just a standard air-assisted airless pump. Anything unique about that pump?
There is, and there's actually also a couple other pumps to talk about from them too. But what I sent you is the Wildcat 1840. It's what they call the icebreaker motor. So it's their Cadillac motor, basically. It's called icebreaker because some paint motors, as you go up and down and stroke all day, you've ever seen ice actually form from the exhaust coming out? Because when you release compressed air, it actually chills. That's how a refrigerator works. And over time, you can actually freeze an air motor. Well, it physically can't move from ice. So they have a design that this can basically run full cycle rate forever and never ice the motor and never have to stop to thaw from the exhaust of the compressed air. So that's a really cool feature on it. Trying to think what else is cool. It's actually hand tight for the suction rod on there. It's actually a really, really easy pump to repair. I kind of feel like the Maytag man when it comes to that line of pumps. Anything that's got that icebreaker and Wildcat design, I've never actually had to sell anything labor-wise on them at all. So that's really cool.
I want to talk about that too. Repairing these types of pumps.
Mm-hmm.
Because the nice thing about the Titan and the Graco is when your pump goes down, everyone pretty much has a local guy that fixes those pumps. You send it, I have a local Sherwin-Williams, you give it to him, he fixes it, and you're off and running.
Okay.
How does one go about having one of these fixed? Because I had to ship my Kremlin pump back to the factory to be repaired. And that is a pain in the butt. I crated it. I had to build a crate to put the pump in. And then I hate the post office more than anything in the world. Yeah. And it took me 3 months before that crate ever actually got mailed out. Why are they so much more complex? They're just not as popular. How come the paint spray repair people don't repair these pumps?
It's a parts game. It's because they don't have access to buy the parts, so they just throw their hands up and don't want to just sell the labor, essentially. They're actually way more simple. As we were talking earlier about the difference between a chevron seal and a self-sealing, self-adjusting cartridge design, Kremlin actually is probably the most easy pump to work on in the world. You can repair and rebuild a Kremlin like an EOS type pump or a 1018, 1014 with 2 crescent wrenches, a pair of needle nose pliers, and I think a 10 millimeter end wrench. And you pull the cotter pin out, take the three 10 millimeter nuts off, the whole fluid section drops. The packing is actually a cartridge, so it actually pops up from the bottom as a solid piece. Take a new one, you pop it in, put those 3 nuts back on and the cotter pin, and you're done. It's literally that easy. There's a YouTube video on Kremlin's site. You can call me, or I have a technical manager that will FaceTime anybody anytime. If they're a customer of ours, I should say. It's not expected. But YouTube these day and age is there's always a video for everything, right? Just take a look. It's easy.
Okay. So hopefully you can repair your own much easier than, because I've tried to repack a Titan 440.
Yeah, they're way harder because you're taking that leather Teflon, and you squeeze those together until there's a perfect amount of friction. There's actually a knack to, if you over tighten it, you'll wear the packing out too fast. You under tighten it, it'll leak, right? So there's some knowledge. With these where it's just a click in cartridge, there's no way to mess it up. I mean, you can put it in upside down, I guess, but it's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think I'm disappointed to hear that. For some reason I just thought it was more complex, and I didn't get a lot of help from them, and whatever. It's over now. But
Yeah.
so for the most part, people will not have to send their pumps to you to be replaced or be repaired.
No.
You'll be able to coach us up pretty quickly on repairing anything that does need to get repaired.
Absolutely. In fact, we've never had a customer ever upset about not having the ability just to call us and have it fixed right over the phone or with a FaceTime.
That's a huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so the icebreaker is not just a sales technique. That's what I never would have guessed it was to prevent ice from full pump.
Yeah. That's what it is.
Guys like me, we're not spraying 24 hours a day, 7 days a week like a factory.
Right. So there's another pump, and I actually don't have it on the website yet. But Wagner makes another pump called the 4015 inverted. So the 4015i. And it was kind of funny because they would bring them to the shows and no one ever bought them. And they were kind of like sitting on the shelf, and I'm going, wait, what is that? I know the market for this. The wood guys are going to love this. So imagine a piston pump, only it's upside down on a stand, and there's a 2-gallon hopper feeds right into the bottom of the pump. The gauges are flipped right side up. It's a weird looking little pump, but if you're doing 2K, right, in small batches, it's cone shaped. You could put literally a quart of paint in and spray every last drop of it. And I do pretty well with those things. They're probably right around $3,200, somewhere in that range. We make a version where it's on a compressor cart as well. So if you go on my Instagram, you can actually see examples of that setup as well.
That is interesting. See, this is the thing. No one tells guys like us about these types of products. And I still believe strongly that the residential paint market is just waiting to be taken over by somebody who actually markets finishing equipment to us.
Go check it out. My YouTube has probably 100 videos, and I have all kinds of stuff on there. Another one that you probably all should look at is the ultrasonic paint gun cleaners.
That's on my list of things to talk about, so I'm glad we're here.
I probably sell 15 a month of those, and I feel like it should be 100 a month of those. Anybody who owns more than 4 spray guns should have one of those things. It's a 1.5 gallon stainless steel heated tank with a basket and a lid. Okay, there are specific things as to why the one I have is better than the one you can go get at Harbor Freight. Everybody always goes through that. I use a proprietary chemical that's heat activated. It has to be in that kind of a tank because the chemical will literally eat everything. It has to be no drain. It'll eat any of the touchscreen things. It's particular. You take your gun apart. The more you take it apart, the better. You put it in this kind of looks like a French fryer, right? You hit the timer and it sends an oscillating sound frequency through from, I think, 5 hertz to 120 hertz. And that wave of frequency will act like a jackhammer on the paint. And in about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on what it is, it's all coming off. In fact, in about 30 to 40 minutes, we can remove powder coating. I've taken off UV coating. I've taken off polyester, urethane. The hardest one I ever had was Cerakote. It took it about an hour. That's the stuff that they're putting on firearms. But it will take off virtually any organic coating ever. You take that.
Because the gun's got a coating on it, doesn't it?
That's anodized, typically. It's not going to take that off. Although the little purple throwaway guns from Harbor Freight, it takes the purple off.
All right, so I have been looking into one of those, and I may need to get one because I love the idea of really cleaning your gun.
Yeah.
To a level that's more than just like scrubbing it a little bit, getting all that paint out.
Yeah. The chemical use will last for 2 years, so you're not rebuying it. It's expensive. I think with shipping, it's $450 for a 5-gallon pail of it. But other than what you lose to evaporation, you can keep using it over and over. You just take it and strain it out with like a nylon 5-gallon strainer bag to get the solids out, put it back in. So imagine if you didn't have to buy lacquer thinner to clean guns for 2 years, what the savings is already there, right?
So what do we, that's on the website then?
Yeah. You have to support, but if you go to finishing shop supplies, ultrasonic cleaner will pop up. Watch it. There's a YouTube video attached. You can see everything there. You can also always search on the site. Just type in ultrasonic cleaner at the little magnifying glass, and it'll pop anything up.
We can also just message you directly through the website at any time that we want. That's the best part.
Yep. I'm the guy that gets the little alert when you text and say, I have a question.
Oracle, it's called the ultrasonic, what is it? The ultrasonic what?
Ultrasonic paint gun cleaning system.
Paint gun
cleaner.
Clayton, you can watch this episode and the first part on my IGTV after, and in about 3 or 4 days it should be on Spotify and iTunes. He said he missed the beginning. No worries, we recorded it. It's also going to be on my feed for a little bit. That's awesome. Let's see, we have more questions. Looks like more of them are from me. They're not really, they're paint questions. Let's talk about robots.
Okay.
Are they going to come take my job and everybody else's job in this?
Probably not. And if they did take your job, you're going to have a better job learning how to control and use the robot to do your job and make more money. That's what I would say about that. But
now, can I get a robot that'll paint a room?
Currently, no.
No.
I have seen robot systems that will paint the inside and outside of a train car, though. That's about as big as I've ever seen.
That's amazing. So that's fascinating. I wish you would show more videos of robots spraying paint on your Instagram. I think we all want to see that.
Okay.
How about, have you come across you was at PDCA this year, that company that sells a digital, it's like you put the headset on and you can spray paint virtually.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, no, I've seen it.
We need to get one that's like cost effective enough, or have them like positioned around the country so people can go practice spraying without actually spraying paint.
Yeah, I've seen that those are pretty expensive. Some of the really large kitchen cabinet shops have invested and done spray gun training with those, and I think they see some positive results, but the things are like crazy expensive.
Yeah, I think he was like $30,000 or something like that.
I think that's down from 100,000.
Yeah, I think it'll keep coming down, but I was blown away. And anyone who wasn't at PDCA Expo this year, hopefully they're back next year, because I put the goggles on and I thought I know how to spray paint, and it tells you like exactly how much overspray. Like it's so exact, and there's a perfect way to spray.
Right.
And a panel, and it shows you how much coverage you had, how much overspray you had. It was unbelievable, and I did not score nearly as well as I was hoping.
Too funny.
Let's see. We have a new question that just popped up. Let's put it up because this is fun. The right painter said, was Ty a painter prior to selling paint equipment?
Yeah, so I actually think it's something that makes me a little bit unique in that I explained earlier, I worked for my dad painting houses growing up, got into cabinet finishing. I went to work for the Kelly-Moore Paint Company when I was 16 and actually learned how to tint and color match and do all that working there. I got married at 18. I don't recommend doing that. Went back to work for my dad for about 5 more years. And then we moved to Oregon, and I went and sold architectural coatings as an outside sales rep. And in fact, I'll tell you how it led me to wood coatings. I get to a little town in Oregon called Bend, Oregon, And the old sales rep that was there, he was probably in his 60s, ended up being a great guy. But, here I am, the new kid coming in, like, hey, I'm the new sales rep. Nice to meet you. And he's like, mm-hmm. So, well, what territory do I have? And he's like, brings this 3-ring binder over that like looks like the yellow pages, like with, names for the white pages, right? And he goes, I'm like, this is all my customers? And he goes, no, these are my customers. You can call on anybody not in this book. So and by the way, this town's only like 80,000 people, right? It's population. So I'm going, you've got every customer in town. What am I going to do? So I started literally reading that book, like looking for a pattern. And what I noticed is he didn't have very many wood cabinet shops. And so I ended up partnering with the Chemcraft guy at the time, who was brand new on the scene. And that's how I really got into wood coatings. And after a few years of that, I was actually selling a couple $1 million in wood coatings in a very small market. And got noticed by an equipment company, and that's how I got into the equipment, and have been doing that ever since. So I think it's unique in that I've applied it, I've sold it, and now I'm doing the equipment for how to apply it and try to make everybody better. I've worn all 3 hats, which is unique.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Just out of my own curiosity, how do these robots, like how does a fully automated line work? Because you like put a piece of wood in the beginning, and it like gets sanded, and then it gets painted, and then sanded and painted and sanded, and then out the door, and no human hands have to touch it, or not quite that much.
It depends. I mean, there's levels, right, of how much automation and what you want. Sometimes too much automation makes it so that you're not flexible in your process, right? What happens if the customer wants a glaze? Well, oh my God, you got to put in a whole nother line for the glaze line, right? Like, so it depends. And that's why when you go to like a Home Depot and you're buying kitchen cabinets, you can buy out of this selection and that's it. Like there's no customization, and that's wise, because although they make it really automated and probably for a cheap price, they're not that flexible on those kinds of lines. And that's why custom on-site painting and shops and those guys have a whole niche in the market, right? I'll tell you about a fun project that we're working on right now. It's probably one of the biggest projects we've done to date. Out here in California, we have a customer that is putting in a power cart finishing system for doors. They make residential like man doors, fiberglass front entry and that kind of thing. And we're putting in, I don't know if anybody's looked at the power carts on my website, but they're a 12-volt battery operated cart. Let's see if I can hang the door on it, and it's going to move around, and then you can flip the door and spray both sides, that kind of thing. It's got 2 booths with robots that are going to paint it. After every booth, there's an infrared oven, goes down the line and goes to the next. We've got 24 paint pumps on it, and we'll do color changes in a few seconds. It'll be probably one of the most automated yet flexible lines on the West Coast.
That is unbelievable. How many doors are they going to paint a day?
They can probably paint, you got to remember, these are custom, where you're going to be able to do like that wood grain effect on a fiberglass door with a split color, like a blue on the backside and a white on the front, right? So everything's highly, highly custom, but probably 225 doors a shift, in 7 hours.
If somebody has to mask off one side of the door still.
They've got to mask it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So,
if you have an automated masker, I'd love to know about that.
there is such a thing, but it's very special.
What about sanding? How can you automate detailed sanding yet?
Somewhat, yes. So there are robot sanders. I also rep a line out of Germany called MB Robotech, and they make probably the best sander for like kitchen cabinet doors and man doors and things like that, in an automated sense. And then in the everyday sense, Surf Prep has actually been blowing me away, and I know there's a lot of things that are similar to it, but I like the tools that they've got. They've been very cool. And those are your handheld.
Yeah. I would love a little box that I could just stick a cabinet door in and have it come out perfectly sanded, ready for finish coat.
Well, I think that the things like that are wishful, but what really makes us all craftsmen is that ability, like, hey, how I sand this and with what tool I use, and that's the skill set that a robot's never going to have, right?
Yeah, totally. I have seen a friend of mine has a linear, automated linear paint sprayer. I think I saw one on your website.
Yeah.
And he just puts pieces of trim through them, and there's a sprayer and a wheel, and some guy just catches it and puts it on a rack, and they spray trim all day long in an enclosed setting.
We actually got something that'll take it and put it on the rack for him.
I,
Not that expensive.
that's awesome. Let's see. I think we're out of questions on here. So we have I believe it's 3 questions that we ask everybody. One of them has to be tailored to what you do. So the first one is, what is your favorite piece of paint paraphernalia, or I guess, what's your favorite tool that you sell?
Favorite tool that I sell? I'm going to have to say definitely the ultrasonic paint gun cleaner, because I think that it changes lives. I mean, you know, you're getting a brand new paint gun every time that you pull it out of this tank. It's like the day you bought it, and there's nothing else like that.
That's a good answer. I have to get one of these things. An ultrasonic paint gun cleaner. That's brilliant.
Yep.
Okay, then I need a DIY tip for painting.
A DIY tip for painting. Give me an example of, like, what do you mean? Like,
I mean, you could tell everyone that they should get a Wagner icebreaker and a paint heater to spray their trim, but usually we ask guys who paint every day, or designers, we ask them a DIY design tip. I mean, I guess, because it's tough to ask you a DIY selling of paint tools.
Here's my DIY tip. Okay, when you're coming to the world of air-assisted airless, air compressor size CFM is king. Stop buying these little air compressors that are going to shoot you in the foot. Go spend the money, buy a big one.
I love that. I get that question all the time. We have 3 of those. We have 2 of the roll air maximum CFM you can get from a 120. And we have one of the Eagle ones that was supposed to be super silent and wasn't silent for too long. But
guys always cheap out on air, and it's the heart of all of the equipment for the real finishing side, where we're doing like pneumatic pumps and guns and things like that. You can't have a big enough compressor.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, and I think a lot of people don't understand what's important in a compressor, and it is, like you said, it's CFM first and foremost. That's what is going to determine whether it's the right one or you need more. And then, like I said, the continuous, what is it? The rating?
Continuous duty.
Continuous duty rating, very important.
Mm-hmm.
So we will run, like, so I used to use a lot of, I still do. We use like conventional automotive gravity-fed cup guns,
mm-hmm.
and even the pressure pot. Not very often anymore, but we used to, and it would require 12, 13 CFM at the gun. So we would take multiple compressors and we would run them to a manifold, and then to one hose to the gun, because we don't want to get the gas-powered compressors out.
That's an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, I actually have a manifold that takes 3 hoses. So I've hooked up 3 compressors to one line at one point. They have one-way valves, and they all have shutoffs, each of the 3 hoses.
Wow.
Goes to a manifold to then one hose. So before I had 2 of the max CFM for 120s, I had 1 of those and 2 more medium-sized compressors. So to get 13 CFM, I had to run 3 compressors into one hose. Crazy stuff, but it's good to understand compressors. And so you sell a compressor on your site that...
I only sell one. I'm not saying it's the end all, but it is one of the highest rated CFM compressors that I've ever found. It's 7 CFM rated. At what? At 40 psi, I believe it is.
40.
Yeah, 2.5.
Whole thing too of PSI at, or CFM at a certain PSI. And, I was always so hopeful that if it was, 8 or 9 at 90, it would be like 13 at 40, and it doesn't work like that.
No, it doesn't.
And then our final question that we ask everybody is, I need your worst horror story selling these types of high-end equipment. I want to you got to tell me a story of when you installed a $200,000 whatever automatic paint sprayer and it didn't work, or somebody came in and said, "Oh, you can't even put this here," or give me some crazy story that you never told anybody.
So I took a job in Reno, Nevada, and I grew up very near to there, and that's where a lot of my dad's clientele was, Lake Tahoe and Reno area. And there was a medical device company that made plungers for syringes, and they were all Teflon coated for very special use. And they hired us to put in a chain on edge system where, like, let's say this is the plunger, it goes around on a conveyor, and then we had multiple guns at all these different angles, and it followed the part as it went through and sprayed it with Teflon. And in the middle of the project, it got handed off from one engineer to another engineer that worked for the company that was the customer. And you could tell as soon as the new engineer came on, he didn't like the fact that it wasn't his idea for the project, and instantly was picking everything apart. And we did the whole runoff, for like the last payment, and he took every one of them and he's like, junk, 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 just throwing them out, right? And I'm like, those look perfectly painted. What are you talking about? And in the specification, he'd found that paint coverage was required at such and such 1/100th of an inch, whatever, under, and it was literally where it fit in the holder on the rack. So there was no way we were ever going to get coverage there, but whatever, right? It was a technicality. We ended up taking all of the equipment back and out. I go home and I'm just, lost a ton of money on it. I think I lost 30 grand on that project. It was just a nightmare. It's all done and out. We removed everything, and I'm telling my dad about what a nightmare that was. And he goes, what company was that? And I tell him, and he goes, "Oh, well, why didn't you tell me that's who it was?" He goes, "We painted the owner of that company's house for the last 20 years. He's one of our best clients." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Yeah, you could have told me. I'd have just called him, and he probably would have told that engineer to stop." And I'm like, oh, man. So that, always remember to check your connections. Everybody knows somebody. It would have saved me so much time and effort for somebody who was just picking on it,
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. When clients want to be unhappy, they will, and there's nothing we can do about it.
You absolutely can't. In fact, I was looking at my desk. I don't see it, but I used to keep that plunger on my desk, like where my pins are, so every day I could look at it and remember it was a perfectly painted part that was rejected.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, Ty, thank you very much for joining me on this show. I think a lot of people learned a lot. I know I did. It's been a pleasure.
Got it. Hey, please follow both of my Instagrams, totalfinishingsupplies.com and totalfinishingsolutions.com. So both websites.
Absolutely. Especially if you want to buy random parts in the middle of the night when you remember that maybe you need a different size tip, because it comes very handy.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody.